Browns preparing for the Denver Broncos here on Thanksgiving weekend, Wednesday here in Berea. And Joe Flacco in town, Mary Kay, our first chance to hear from him. What were your early impressions of Joe?
You know, my big takeaway from Joe Flacco today was the fact that he really believes that he still has plenty left in the tank, that he can still play, and that he is not ready to give up his NFL career yet. And what that says to me is that he came here to play. He did not come here to be the number 3 quarterback. He came here for an opportunity to try to help the Cleveland Browns get to the Super Bowl, where, of course, he's already been once before.
Yeah, Ashley, a very accomplished quarterback, like Mary Kay said, has been to the Super Bowl, has won a Super Bowl, and just brings a wealth of knowledge for Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And, of course, like Mary Kay said, he still thinks he can play a little.
Yeah, I think both of those guys today, because we did hear from DTR2, said all the things you would expect, and about him being a sort of mentor, and that he remembers what it was like to be a rookie coming into the league and having to sort of learn everything about the day-to-day in the NFL. But I also thought it was kind of funny. I think Mary Kay was the one who asked him, is it strange after all these years of beating up on the Browns, you find yourself in a Cleveland uniform? And he's like, it's a bit weird, but he thinks it's less weird because he's had a few stops in between his obviously lengthy career with Baltimore and now here in Cleveland.
Now, Mary Kay, Ashley said it. We heard from Dorian Thompson-Robinson today, too. He seemed happy to have Joe Flacco here, and he's ready to kind of take some of those lessons from his last start in Pittsburgh and apply them this week in Denver.
Yes, and that's true. And the more I think about this today, here's how I'm looking at this quarterback situation. DTR has got to go out and stave off the former Super Bowl MVP. He's got to go out and elevate his game over what he did against the Steelers. It was a very conservative game plan. So now he's got to go out to Denver, and he's got to do a little bit better in some altitude and in some noise. And if he can keep this train rolling along, then he can keep his job. But if not, now they have a better second quarterback, a better option to plug right in there.
And Ashley, he even said that he welcomes that competition, that as the competitor, he doesn't mind having another guy in that room that can push him.
Yeah, I think that's the right mentality to have, and really it's the only mentality to have. But yeah, we've talked about DTR's performance against the Steelers and how that last drive, I think, essentially was a big turning point for him. But I definitely think going into this game against Denver, he has to be careful with turning the ball over. Denver's forced a surprising amount of turnovers. They're in a 6-way tie for second in the NFL right now. And I do think when you think back to that Ravens game, he threw the ball away 3 times. So you can't have a similar kind of performance against the Broncos.
Now some injury news, Mary Kay, as we're recording this. You just put a post up on cleveland.com/Browns about the state of the Browns secondary and some injuries that they're dealing with.
Yeah, the one to keep an eye on, I think, more so than anybody, is number 1 cornerback Denzel Ward. He suffered a shoulder injury in the Steelers game, and I've just been getting little rumblings today that it could be something that keeps him out for maybe a game, maybe 2 games. I'm not really sure yet. Still trying to dig in and figure out what's going on there. But there seems to be some concern about whether or not Denzel Ward is going to be able to just continue on the way he has been. So that's something to definitely keep an eye on. But today, 2 other defensive backs sat out practice, and that was Juan Thornhill, who's missed the past 2 games, and also Grant Delpit. Now, of course, this comes on the heels of Rodney McLeod leaving the lineup and leaving the roster this week with a torn biceps. He's out for the season. They cannot afford any more injuries in this secondary.
Yeah, and Ashley, Denzel probably having his best season as a pro here this year, really thriving in Jim Schwartz's scheme. So it would be tough for this Browns team to lose him, especially because, even though maybe the teams they're playing coming up aren't great, but they do have some good receivers that they've got to face.
Yeah, and for the most part, we haven't seen this defense have to struggle with injuries this year the same way the Browns offense has. Obviously, they're without 3 marquee players on that other side of the ball right now. So Rodney, I think he's not one of those big names you think of in this defense, but he's put his stamp on this unit pretty quickly here. We know how important he was for Jim Schwartz installing his scheme. So if they're without Denzel Ward, I think that's the first really true huge blow potentially to this defense, with the guy having to miss a handful of games if it comes to that.
And of course, they'll likely be without Anthony Walker, who's week to week not going to go on IR, but Jordan Kanashik was activated off of IR today. So maybe some reinforcements coming to the linebacking core. Full coverage of everything that happened here today at cleveland.com/Browns.